After I'd been on the highway patrol for a while, they asked me if I would get involved in the training program. With that, they wanted me to teach accident investigation. They sent me to several classes in Florida so that I could become an accident reconstructionist. So I went through accident reconstruction training. In that training, there's a good bit of algebra. I always enjoyed algebra in school, and so it was a very enjoyable class for me. I enjoyed going through it, learning how to measure skid marks and calculate speeds and things like that. It was just very interesting, just right up my alley, and they paid me to do something that I enjoyed doing. Well, whenever I was with a few other fellows also, we did it together, came back, they asked me, I say they asked me, they told me that I would develop a class and teach an accident investigation class to all of our existing troopers. They already knew how to investigate accidents, but they wanted me to give them the basics of being able to measure skid marks and calculate speeds and things like that. So not go into as much detail as what I learned, but at least the basics. And so we had our annual in-service training program. In the in-service program, we'd have 26 training classes, and we would call the troopers in, and they would just send in X number of troopers, about 50 troopers usually. They would bring them from all across the state so that it wouldn't hurt the force that was out patrolling the roads. So we were going to do this 26 times. So we developed the class, and the first class comes in. We go through the accident investigation class. I made it very simple because I realized that we would have guys in there that would have been in their 50s and 60s, and that they would have never had algebra, and they would, it would concern them. And so I started out very simple, and we worked our way up. Well, by the time we had our second class, those guys that had had the first class, whenever they left there, a lot of the older ones, they didn't leave there and say, oh, he made it so simple and he started out small and just worked. They didn't say that. Instead, apparently, they went out and said, oh yeah, you just wait until you go to in-service. They're making us learn algebra now. I only know that because when I got up to the second, the third, the fourth class, whatever it was, and I would come in there and I would start my class and I would pass calculators out, I would see the looks on those older men's faces, and they were about scared to death. I believe they would walk up on a rowdy drunk and not feel nearly as bad as they did whenever they walked into my accident reconstruction or my algebra class. But we got them through it, and all of them ended up being a success. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina, and it's great to be able to spend just a few moments with you today. I was looking in the Bible and looking at whenever the Israelites, the first time that they got to the edge of the Promised Land, they were instructed to send in 12 spies. And they were supposed to go over into the Promised Land, check things out, see how things looked, just spend some time, look around, get a good idea of what's happening, and then come back to us and tell us so that we can formulate a plan about how we want to go into the Promised Land. Well, when they came back, I mean, they brought back this huge cluster of grapes, and I mean, it was just like, and a couple of them said, I'm telling you, it's everything that we've heard it would be. It's truly flowing with milk and honey. They said, look at these grapes, will you? I mean, it's just going to be a wonderful thing. Well, a couple of them said that. But then there were 10 others that said, oh my goodness, forget about the grapes. I mean, there are people there that are twice as tall as we are. I mean, there's a bunch of them. They have fortified cities. I mean, we're just wasting our time. All we're going to do is just get ourselves killed if we try to go invade this land. I never really noticed it before. but as I was studying this over the last several days, one thing that I noticed was it wasn't their report that created the problems. It wasn't their viewpoint or the facts that created the problems. It was the fact that they spread a bad report among the people. I just never seen that before. Just like my algebra class, they could have just said, yeah, they're teaching a little bit of algebra, but no big deal, you'll get through it fine. Just give them the facts. Instead, they went out and they said, oh, algebra. Oh man, it's just terrible. I'd never heard of it. And when the people come, they're all upset. They're on edge. They're wondering. Matter of fact, if it was voluntary, none of the older guys probably would have even come to the class. They came because they had to. And 10 of these men that went over into what was supposed to be the promised land, they came back, and it was okay to give their opinion. It was okay to say this is what we saw whenever they came back and reported to Moses, but that's not where they stopped. They went out and talked to as many people as they could, and they spread around a bad report and got people personally involved in something that was not supposed to be their decision to make. And the next thing you know, these people are grumbling and complaining and wanting to get rid of Moses as their leader. They're actually wanting to not pay any attention to God because he's the one that is actually leading them. Because these 10 men went out and spread a bad report. Makes me think about Christians and how we do things and the things that we say about others. It's easy for us to look at somebody, to have an opinion, to maybe even not particularly care about how somebody talks or how they dress or how they act. I mean, we all have opinions. We look at things differently. That's perfectly all right. And if someone were to ask us about a fact about somebody, then I think it's all right to tell them, what that fact may be. But it's also part of a human nature, I guess, that sometimes we like to embellish. We like to lay it on kind of thick. If we don't like somebody, then we want to make sure that no one else does. If there's a certain quality that we don't like about someone, then we need to make sure that other people don't like that quality either. I think that's what those spies were doing. They spread a bad report, and they did it intentionally. And as Christians, I think it's sometimes we need to kind of do a double check on ourselves. There are oftentimes reasons why someone might speak harshly, or maybe their attitude is not the best attitude that we've seen. Maybe they're going through something in life. We don't know where people have been and the issues that they've had to deal with. And so because of that, as Christians, we're supposed to do the same thing that Jesus did, and that's to give people a lot of grace. I think about the words of David. I think David was he had so many things happen in his life. He went from being a shepherd boy to being a king, to being run off his throne, to coming back again. If anybody ever went through anything, it was David. And I'm not sure when he penned these words, but he said this: "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." And I noticed he said not only my words, but he said my meditation. In other words, what am I thinking? What am I thinking on? God, help me with not only the words that I speak, and certainly those, but also what I'm thinking about and how I am thinking about someone. Instead of thinking ill of people and wishing ill upon others, I believe God wants us to pray for that person. I think God wants us to be able to maybe even put ourselves in that person's shoes. If I had to go through what they have gone through or are going through, would I be able to do as well as they're doing? And I think if we take the moment to think about that, then we might have a tendency of offering a little bit more grace to the people around us. So I'm hoping that that can be our prayer today. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. May you truly be able to let your words and the meditation of your heart be pleasing to God this week. Thanks for taking the time and watching today.